This is For Keeps, a podcast about collections and connections. I'm David Peterkowski. Los Angeles. It's a city of contradictions. It's sunny but smoggy, relaxed yet intense. The kind of place where people gush, "Let's do lunch," but then when you call them to set it up, do they call you back? Of course they don't. I mean, it was only their idea, so don't you think they should at least call you back? I mean, I've heard that can happen to people. Jokes and tired cliches aside, there are two things that are undeniable about America's second biggest city. It's the show business capital of the universe, and its glitzy history has given it an A-list reputation for nightlife and dining, whether it's that lunch you'll never have or any other meal. LA's rich and vibrant past is where Alison Martino comes in. A lifelong resident of the city, she's made a name for herself as the curator of Vintage Los Angeles, a thriving Facebook page on which she spotlights old photos, memories, and memorabilia showcasing the City of Angels. She's got one hell of a collection of LA-related items, gathered over the course of a lifetime living in the city, and helped along by the fact that she's the daughter of the late Al Martino, the singer who scored a string of pop hits in the 50s and 60s. Alison's also active as a preservationist, routinely turning her passion into action to help save landmarks across the city from being torn down and replaced by God knows what. She even does publicity work for the legendary Dan Tana's, a restaurant on Santa Monica Boulevard that elegantly epitomizes the LA of yesteryear. When I found out that Alison's got a museum-worthy collection of vintage Los Angeles items right in her own home, I reached out to her to learn all about it. In our conversation, we talked about her amazing array of items from TV, film, and the old-school star hangouts, her efforts to save a statue of a beloved cartoon moose from oblivion, and a special piece of Hollywood memorabilia that captures her dad's moment of cinematic history in The Godfather.
Hi there.
Hi, Alison. How are you?
Good. Let's do it.
Okay. Well, why don't you take us back to the start of your history as a collector of all things vintage Los Angeles, if you don't mind. I know you're a native Angelino, and I'm guessing your love for LA was pretty strong even from an early age, am I right?
Yes, like from the day I was born, I was like, my mom was given a pin that said it's a girl. And like, I don't know, my mom's like, since that day you were collecting, because I took that pin and I put it in my, I still have it. I think it may have been, I was an only child, so they took me out a lot with them. They took me to like a lot of restaurants. I wasn't like home with babysitters. And I always took like a token or something from the restaurant, like a memento, like a matchbook cover or a menu, or something that would have their logo on it. And I was collecting that stuff really young for some reason. I always needed like something to remind me of where I was. So that's probably why I have a pretty massive matchbook collection of pretty much every restaurant that was ever in LA that is now defunct, because there's so much of it that's gone. And I think that's what started my collecting even more vigorously, is after things started closing. Some of the great restaurants we love in the city are no longer with us. I was so happy I had a memento from each place. And years later, in my 20s, I was producing a show on the EAT Entertainment Channel called Mysteries and Scandals, which was about all the scandals and the mysteries that came out of the golden age of Hollywood. And I was happy that I had so much memorabilia of my own to place within the show. If we needed we were doing a show in Marilyn Monroe and we need to see what Hollywood looked like back in 1950-something, I had photos of that, because my collecting went far beyond just collecting things from restaurants, and I got really into photographs and documentation of what the city used to look like. And now I'm sitting on like 25,000 images or something. So then years after that, I thought, what am I going to do with all this stuff that I have? It would be so fun to display it somewhere or have maybe a museum one day. And then Facebook started these things called Facebook fan pages. And I created a page called Vintage Los Angeles that I could take pictures of my stuff and put it up. And I'm like, a few years later, I'm at over 310,000 people are on it. And it's opened up this whole world for me of being a spokesperson for historic LA.
That's amazing. And I love that you can put on your LinkedIn page producer/prop master.
I know, isn't that fun? I'm like, it's funny, like people ask me, well, what do you do? And like, it's hard for me to explain what I do. I say I was a television producer and I'm still doing that, but I also, I'm a plot master. I like collecting and documenting and curating old Hollywood. And it's not even just old Hollywood, it's LA in general. That's why I called my page Vintage Los Angeles, not Vintage Hollywood, because I didn't want people to think I'm just into Hollywood. I'm really into architecture and different architects around the city. And I love the way cars used to look on the streets. And, I just love the whole entire, like LA doesn't get a very good rap for preservation. So I guess I'm preserving our memories. If I can't save a building from coming down, at least I can remind you of when you were there. And I've been told that people tell me they go onto my page and they get sucked in for hours because it's so emotional. And people go, oh my gosh, I totally remember that tiki restaurant she's talking about. I think I had a 5th birthday there in the 70s. And then the page is so interactive, which is a lot of fun for me. I learned so much about LA that I never knew through people on my page that share stories. And I think what's unique about Vintage LA and being on a social media platform rather than reading books about LA is that you're getting a one-on-one perspective from someone who's been here forever. Like I have someone on my page who's 99 years old, born and raised in LA, and she'll always share something incredible that we never would have known unless it came directly from her experiences from 75, 80 years ago. I think like we're like the internet textbook of LA, like we're like I call myself the DeLorean of the internet.
And that woman sounds like she's literally vintage Los Angeles.
She is. I always tell her, she's like, this is our VLA expert. She's our mascot. She's the one. And believe me, she corrects me too, which I appreciate.
Need to be kept on your toes.
Yes.
So you mentioned that a lot of the items in your collection center on restaurants that were once quite popular among, movie stars, TV stars, singers, and the like. I know you have items from iconic places such as Chasen's and the Brown Derby and so forth. Can you talk about some of your favorite items from the old-time LA restaurant scene?
Yeah, I have favorites. Chasen's was a favorite of mine. I was there even on closing night. I think it was 95. And I remember I took a menu and then everyone else started taking a menu and I had the maitre d' sign it. But my favorite things are from my deep past, like when I was a child. Like I remember going to the Luau, this amazing Polynesian restaurant that was owned by Lana Turner's husband, Steve Crane, on Rodeo Drive. And it had like a moat around it and a bridge you would walk over. And they had a little shop inside and everything was Polynesian tiki heaven. And that closed when I was only 10 years old. And I think that really crushed me to turn into like a mall, and then all the strip malls started coming in and some of the places like the Luau were taken down for just something so bland and horrible. So those pieces, I have a lot of memorabilia from even places before I was born, which I started studying so many restaurants like Dino's Lodge. Dean Martin had a restaurant on the Sunset Strip in the 50s and 60s. And I have relics from that restaurant, like they used to put candles on the table and it would have his face on it, the character of his face. It's stuff like that I collect. I have a glass the day the Whiskey Go-Go opened with their original logo that they changed right away after that. I try to get pieces that are standout pieces that are maybe a little one of a kind, and they're just getting harder and harder to find. So I don't know what I'll do with all of it one day. I would love to put it maybe at the Hollywood Museum. I have a lot of stuff from the Sunset Strip. I collect heavily Sunset Strip stuff from 40s, 50s, 60s. Maybe one day we can open up a little Sunset Strip gallery and have those pieces in there. That would be great.
That would be. And still along the restaurant line of conversation, I know you have, I think it's 2,000 caricatures of celebrities that were once on the walls of the Palm. Is that right?
So the Palm restaurant was over here in West Hollywood, and they had 2,000 characters on the walls through the years when they first opened in the 70s till they closed a few years ago. It's like 2,500 characters. And when they lost their lease, myself and the hostess of the restaurant who'd been there a long time were thinking, God, how terrible will it be if this becomes a Walgreens or like a Rite Aid or demolished and all those characters end up rubble. So Bruce Bozzi, whose family has owned the Palm chain for years, was so cool to actually hire a company that could cut out each individual face. It's incredible. Talk about preservation. That's one of the most amazing preservation things I've ever seen in the city. And they carved out each face. And so we had, a few years ago, we handed them out back to the people who were on the walls in the parking lot. So like Bob Newhart stopped by to get his, Carol Channing got hers, Barbara Eden got hers, Norm Crosby, all these like showbiz classic entertainers. We were able to give those spaces back to them. And if they had passed on, then we made sure their families got them. There's still a few hundred that haven't been claimed, which I think we're going to put into auction at some point.
Uh-huh. Very cool.
Yeah. So we try to do unique preservation situations. Like if you can't save a building, hey, let's try to save its sign, or let's try to save something within size. Let's take the bar out and try to repurpose it somewhere else. There's ways of preserving things without complete and total loss.
Mm-hmm. You get creative.
Yeah, you have to get creative in order to. So much of LA comes down. I just call LA, to me, is one big giant movie set. Sets come up, sets go down. And it seems to be what's happening in Hollywood. And then another victory I had a few years ago, it was actually a year ago, was getting the junk carts out of the Chinese theater forecourt that was junking up the whole, all their signatures are on the cement slabs there, their handprints, their fingerprint, their finger, everything, their name. And they had people selling T-shirts and all that. And so the good old vintage LA, because I can't take complete credit for it because it really was the people on my page who reacted so much to it. We started a petition, got thousands of signatures, and in 2 days the carts were removed.
That's terrific.
Yeah, I got a nice letter from the Groman family to say thank you. That was like a frameable email. I feel so proud of that one. But yeah, you have to get creative in order to save things. So I save. I'll never stop collecting LA relics my whole life, and I'm just lucky to live in a city where I can find it. Go to the estate sales and the garage sales and flea markets, and of course eBay is a problem. But once in a while you'll find something completely incredibly unique.
I can imagine.
So I'm just gonna keep going until I have it all. And sometimes the VLA followers are so great, will send me stuff. I can't keep this in my house. I'm running out of space, but they can keep handing it over to me. I'll take care of it.
Do you live in an airplane hangar?
No, but I have. One day I'm going to organize this place. It'll be even more perfect. But I also I do all the social media for Dan Tana's. So I run their Facebook page and their publicity, and, they're going on 54 years. And Mike, who's the bartender, he's been there 50 years. That's incredible too. It's incredible for a restaurant to survive in Los Angeles over 50 years. That's just so impressive and so phenomenal. And it just doesn't happen. I think Musson Franks will be 100 soon. Wow. But there's not, we're losing more and more. We have Michelli's, which is another old Italian classic in Hollywood. The West Side is not, like down by the beach. We have Chez J's. There's definitely pockets of places that are still around. Sometimes the restaurants don't own the land. So when a developer comes in and says, I want to make this whole block new condos, that's the scary part. So you kind of never know when that can happen.
Yeah, there's a favorite place of mine in LA, the Apple Pan, where I believe they actually own the land that the restaurant is on, and they persist.
Yes. If you own the land, you're going to be in much better shape. You just never know when a classic eatery says they're done, or a developer comes in and makes them an offer they can't refuse, right?
Mm-hmm. So speaking of offers you can't refuse, I wanted to ask you about items you have from various TV and film productions, including, I believe you have at least one thing from The Godfather in which your dad played the singer Johnny Fontaine.
It's funny that I said make an offer you can't refuse because Marlon actually says that to my dad in the movie for the first time. I'd say the most valuable thing or the most rare collectible I have of The Godfather is one of the original scripts. So that is not in my apartment. That is in a safe deposit box for anyone that's listening. But it's quite a remarkable piece of Hollywood history because it's the scene where Marlon and my dad are chatting in his office there in the beginning of the film where he asks him, he needs to get that part in the film. And then Marlon says it's an offer, I'll make him an offer you can't refuse. And he slaps my dad. Their notes are in there, within the script. They kept rewriting that scene and their handwritten notes are on that. That's, I guess, not just an emotional piece of history for my family and I, but just to have such an iconic scene with Marlon Brando, and their notes are there on that. So that would be my number one piece. And I know a lot of them don't exist, the scripts. I know obviously Francis has one. I think he published a book recently with all of his notes on each page. But I know, producer already, I don't even think he had one at the end.
Wow.
So, yeah, one day I'd love to publish some of those pages.
People would love to see it. So what other items do you have from TV and film?
Well, I have a lot of scripts. I have a lot of signed scripts from when I was growing up. I was lucky to go to a lot of the tapings of like Happy Days and Laverne and Shirley and Love Boat and Fantasy Island. And I would go to those tapings, and I don't know, because just the collector in me always had to have something from where I was. And, there were no photographs back then. Nobody took pictures. Today, everyone's on the cell phone. Can I get a selfie, a selfie, a selfie? So when you're growing up in the 70s, you need hard evidence you were there, right? Because I don't have a picture to prove to my friends in the second grade that I was at the Laverne and Shirley taping. So I would make sure can I get a script, from the director? You need hand me, one of the scripts, and then I'd have the whole cast sign it. So I have a lot of that kind of stuff.
Very cool.
And I have things that, props from the Smothers Brothers and some props from Laugh-In. I'd have to walk around my apartment to look around and see what I've got. I've got a lot of Beatles memorabilia, so I've got a lot of music memorabilia. You'll just have to come by and see it sometime. There's a lot of stuff here.
I could have sworn on a YouTube video I saw of your collection that I saw a Sonny and Cher ashtray. Is that possible?
I do. I have, and a cup. I have some props from Sonny and Cher and some stuff they made. One of my most valuable pieces, I think, is a mug that was on the Johnny Carson show that he used. So Johnny would have these mugs made, and they would sit on his desk when he was interviewing someone and had his face on it. I know that people told me on the show that those mugs would always disappear. People were always swiping them. And so he made about 20 a year, I think. And I have one of those, and I think that's a pretty valuable piece of TV memorabilia. Johnny would have held that mug at some point. And I have, from restaurants, I have this original sign that used to be on the Nikki Blair's. I have original, when the Godfather would shoot, and they would put signs on each car that says, Godfather shooting, lot 5. I have really cool stuff like that. I probably have an ashtray from every single restaurant that was ever in LA. And my stuff from the Dean Martin restaurant's pretty extensive. Salt and pepper shakers with his face on it. I have the sign from Romanoff's. Yeah, there's a lot. This is why I have to write a book. That's my next mission, is to get photographs of all of this stuff, get stories from people that were there, most likely from my page, the members of my page, and publish a book of LA memorabilia.
So if it wasn't nailed down, there's a good chance it's in your apartment.
I'm not saying. A lot of it is in safe places. So, and again, it just keeps growing. And I also have a lot of menus, hundreds and hundreds of original menus from, again, probably every restaurant that's defunct, And yeah, you'll just have to come by sometime. I just acquired something that's pretty unique. I just acquired Suzanne Plachette had her name plaque on the front of the door on the Newhart show in her dressing room. I just acquired that recently. I'm always on the hunt for something unique and personal.
Out of curiosity, how do you go about getting Suzanne Plachette's name card?
That's such a good question. It's actually a great story because I moved into a condo building a few years ago that she used to live in this building. And she was like the president of the Homeowners Association. And when she passed away, there was a bunch of boxes left in the storage section of our building. And our building manager was going through them and found that plaque. Oh, she found a lot of other things. But she found that plaque. She hunted the family down to make sure that they knew they could come pick up this stuff. I went down to meet them and speak with them, and through that, they felt that I should have the plaque because they knew I was really into preservation and collecting things, and they thought I would honor it. So, of course, it's here in my house in a huge frame. I was going to put it on the front door, but my name's not Suzanne. But it's just neat to know that was found here within a building I live in. And I feel like maybe sometimes these things find you. With each thing you collect, there comes a story with it. I'm not really that interested in finding something unless I know what the story behind it is. So sometimes eBay is a little tricky because you're buying something, but you have no idea where it came from, whose hands it was in, is it 100% real? But when you find something that's like the sign on the Nikki Blair's restaurant, which is a popular restaurant on the Strip, and it's handed to you by Nikki Blair, it becomes so much more valuable and priceless in a collector's mind that it came from them. I collect about anything, but I like the pieces that come from them or their family knows you have it. I go to a lot of estate sales. I just went to Monty Hall's estate sale, and one of their family members knows me and was just so happy that I was picking up some mementos, like his name tag on the show. let's make a deal tag with his name on it. And they were like, of all people to have this, I'm just so happy it's you. It makes me feel good.
So I know that your dad was close friends with Joey Bishop, who, of course, was a member of Hollywood's Rat Pack back in the day. Do you have any memorabilia that was Joey's? I
have a lot of pictures with Joey growing up. So I do have Buddy Hackett's watch, though, so we can segue to Buddy. So Buddy Hackett used to come to our house in the 70s. My dad was a pretty amazing chef. And he loved having lots of people over for dinner, and our dinner parties were just so classic. And those old showbiz guys coming in, nothing can ever replace their humor and their laugh. And they were so good to like me, the kids. And one Christmas, I was sitting on I was sitting on Buddy Hackett's lap, and he had this watch on that had all Hebrew letters on it. And I thought that was fascinating. And I said, God, that's such a great watch, buddy. And he goes, kid, you can have it. And he took it off of his hand. And he goes, but I'm keeping the leather band, though. He kept the leather band, and he took the piece, just the face, and gave that to me. And so I have that. And I also have a watch that belonged to Maury Amsterdam that he gave me when he was on. Maury used to do a lot of stuff for Disney. And I guess they gave him a pretty incredible watch during all the years that he worked for Disney. And he gave that to me before he passed away. Those are the special pieces.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell the Rocky and Bullwinkle story?
I'll try to tell it as fast as I can.
Okay.
There was a Rocky and Bullwinkle statue on Sunset Strip that was a classic piece of Sunset Strip history. Sunset Strip used to be a lot more whimsical. There were sculptures and characters, and the billboards were a lot more pop art. And Sunset Strip in the 60s was, to me, the most fascinating time. And the Bullwinkle statue went missing one morning. And someone sent me some video that they shot on their phone at like 6 o'clock in the morning. We were driving down Sunset, and they saw a big crane come and pull up the Bullwinkle and put it in the truck and drove it away. So I put the video up on my Vintage LA page going, what's happening? And everyone just started talking about it. Like, no, what happened? What happened? There's so many stories about what really happened, but what came out of that page was really, really interesting. Nobody knew where it was going. People were speculating that it might be going to Disney, that it might be going to Nickelodeon. There was a Bullwinkle movie coming out. Maybe they wanted to have it at the premiere. I heard every story you can imagine until I got an email from the restoration guy, actually the one restoring it, and says, it's safe. Don't worry. I have it with me. And he even sent me a photo to prove that he had it. But here's the mystery. It showed up completely restored. It was taken away because it had a huge crack in it. I guess that's why they were taking it away. They knew it would eventually fall over. And then it showed back up at the Paley Center in Beverly Hills. It's huge in person when you see it. See, when you used to see it up on Sunset Strip, it didn't look as big as it does when you come eye level to it. It's huge. And then they had it in West Hollywood City Hall lobby for about a year. And now it's missing again. So if anyone's listening to this, if anyone knows where it is, please let me know.
If anyone's listening in Frostbite Falls, Minnesota, please call us up.
You never know. Sometimes you never know where these things end up,
Exactly.
You do need to come by, though, and see some of this stuff sometime. I do have little gatherings of just... You want to show this stuff off, it's hard when you have so much stuff. And I think what's great about social media is being able to take a photo of something and put it up and then watch the thread go and see what people say and what memories it sparks. And people really are sentimental about history. And I think that Vintage LA started at a time where we're heavily now into the 21st century. Everyone's on their cell phone. Everyone lives now through computer, and you look sometimes back at these photos of just people strolling down Hollywood Boulevard and they have no phone in their hand. Maybe life was a little more engaging back then. I'm not sure. I still think that the social media is amazing how it brought everyone together. And look at Vintage LA, 310,000 historic enthusiasts on that page that want to talk about history. And if I didn't have the internet to discuss this with, where would I go? The library? You can't talk there. So, I used to live in libraries to just, read every book about LA and try to see what things look like back then, what the phone booths look like, what the streets look like, the cars look like. And now today, you just can scan an old postcard, throw it up, and the thread on Vintage LA goes into hundreds, sometimes thousands of comments. I had that car. They start fighting what year the car is. My favorite parts are when people say, like I'll throw up a picture of, say, an old diner, and someone will say, I met my husband there 35 years ago. We're still together. Or I used to work there. That place was awful or something. And they're like, wait, tell us more. Or, the Tower Records situation right now with Russ Solomon passing away, who created Tower Records. Vintage LA is just exploding with stories about how many star sightings were seen at Tower Records through the years. And I remember going to the record store and standing in line with Elton John, who's buying the same record. It was like people used to ask me growing up, where can I see a movie star? I said, there's 3 places you'll be able to see a movie star no matter what. Tower Records, Hamburger Hamlet, which was our little eating place up on Sunset Strip. You'd run into everybody, or our old Thrifty, which today is a Rite Aid. But the Thrifty in Beverly Hills, I saw Walter Matthau in there, Fred Astaire when I was a kid, Jack Lemmon getting ice cream at the Rite Aid. Those are the best places. None of them are around anymore.
I believe Hamburger Hamlet was a Dean Martin hangout. Is that right?
Yeah, he was a Sunday night hangout. He liked a couple places in LA, definitely Hamburger Hamlet and a place called La Familia in Beverly Hills. We used to see him there a lot, and Mateo's in Westwood. That was where you saw Dean. And probably occasional Chasen's. Frank Sinatra was also a Hamburger Hamlet person. And he was also Chasen's and Mateo's on Sunday nights. It's funny looking back, you kind of knew where you could find them. If you kind of grew up here, you kind of knew, you'd hear about where they were. Or my dad would have a dinner party and you'd find out like, oh, I just saw Frank Sinatra. He was over at so-and-so. Oh, okay, I didn't know he went there. Okay. And you would start to sort of figure out where you could see them.
If they were not getting a prescription filled at Thrifty.
I did see Walter Matthau in the line getting medication in full makeup. He must have come from something. He was in full stage makeup. Absolutely one of my favorite sightings of all time.
Unforgettable, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so one last question for you, and I think I might know the answer to this. If someone was planning on visiting LA for the first time and they wanted to get a quick taste of the vintage Los Angeles that you love so much, where would you send them and why?
A question I'm asked often. I would send them to Dan Tana's without question for dinner. It feels like when you walk into Dan Tana's, you're walking into like a private club or something out of a mobster movie, and you'll always see someone there. I love it. It's open 7 days a week till 2 o'clock in the morning, and that never happens. LA is sort of an early town. I'd send them to Dan Tana's. I'd send them to the Hollywood Museum so they can see what Hollywood used to look like. I'm not trying to put down my city. I love Los Angeles more than any place in the world. I'll never live anywhere else ever. But I feel bad when tourists come or family members come and they want to go to Hollywood Boulevard and they get there and it's...
You can say it.
It's just not classy anymore. And I don't know if classy is the right word because it was gritty in the 70s and I loved it. But today it's sort of like Disneyland, without the rides. So it's, crowds of people and the characters trying to scare you on the street. And then there's some crime. And again, it's just really junked up a lot and gotten so commercial. And they want to see a movie store. They want to see a mansion. They want to go to the classic eateries. So there are some great eateries that Moose on Frank, without question, in Hollywood, they'd have to go see. You sit in the booth where Charlie Chaplin used to eat. And they'll tell you all that when you go into the restaurant. I want to sit where Steve McQueen used to sit. They'll show you. Santa Monica, there's a Chez J's, which is just fabulous old historic relic restaurant. But to feel old LA, just sort of walking the streets, you'd probably have to go downtown now. A lot of the old theaters down there on Broadway have been restored. All the vintage neon lights are shining at night, and it's much safer these days. And absolutely go downtown to check out the theater district.
Good suggestions. And in case anyone is wondering at home, I knew you were going to say Dan Tana's.
It's my favorite. I'm biased. What can I say? I love it. I love La Scala in Beverly Hills. That's another old classic. If you go onto my Vintage LA page, there's a restaurant section in my page in the photos, and I sort of update what's still around every year, because it seems like every year something is closing. Cantor's is a great place, a deli over on Fairfax that's open 24 hours. That's rare. And they've been around since the 1950s and everything. And there's very space age and definitely old mid-century. And then, if you can get a car and drive around in old Hancock Park, you'll see incredible 1920s houses that look like the houses in Sunset Boulevard. There's still a lot of incredible architecture here. You just have to find it.
And if you can't find it, just go eat.
Just go eat, right? Go eat, or go on my page and see what it used to look like, okay?
Fair enough. Okay, well, that's everything I have. Thank you so much, Alison, for taking the time to talk about the old days of LA with me.
I had so much fun, and thank you so much. See you when you come to LA, Dan Tennis.
Yes, we'll do that.
Okay. Take care. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, so after I spoke with Alison, she emailed me to let me know that she does have something that once belonged to Joey Bishop. Is it a knickknack that was buried in a drawer, perhaps? No, it's a piano. Joey Bishop's old piano, the one from his TV show, sits in Alison's apartment. I'm picturing it as the centerpiece of her living room, maybe covered in the menus of Sunset Strip restaurants from days gone by, or maybe ashtrays. Either way, it sounds like a treasure worth keeping. Now, if she can just track down that Bullwinkle statue. For Keeps is a production of me, David Peterkowski. Thanks to Alison Martino for talking to me about her extensive collection of vintage Los Angeles memorabilia and memories. And if you want to go further down the fascinating rabbit hole of old-time LA, you owe it to yourself to visit the Vintage Los Angeles group page on Facebook. Think of it as an offer you can't refuse. The show's theme song is by the band Still Flyin. The closing theme is by Eric Frisch, and additional music for this episode was by the Matt Nowlin Jazz Orchestra. You can email the show by writing to me at forkeepspodcast@gmail.com or follow the show on Instagram and Twitter at forkeepspodcast. Thanks for listening to For Keeps. Until next time, keep on keeping on. Before I go, I'd like to introduce you to another collector-friendly podcast that you might like. It's called Vinyl Emergency, and it's all about music collectors' relationship with good old-fashioned vinyl.
Hey everyone, my name's Jim Hankey and I'm the host of Vinyl Emergency, a podcast where musicians, producers, comedians, and those who dream up, press, release, or collect vinyl records discuss their relationship with the medium today as well as in their formative youth. Artwork that has stood the test of time, neighborhood record stores we remember, the first albums we ever bought, vinyl's warmth and sound. The tangible object of a vinyl record can bring forth so many intangible memories, and that's what we try to capture on the show. Guests have included Roseanne Cash, Ben Montench of Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, Brian Stack from Conan and The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, Ted Leo, Lily Hyatt, and Dave Porter of Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. We've been known to do an episode or two in front of a live audience as well, and we also talk to everyday record collectors about what drives their passion. We even have episodes dedicated to the processes of mastering for vinyl, properly cleaning your records, the feeling of standing in line for hours on record store day, and much more. Tune into Vinyl Emergency however you get your podcasts. Visit us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Vinyl Emergency, or stop by our website, vinylemergency.com.